The other side of that is the toxicity of ideology. That ideology itself is poisonous. That in the 15th and 16th century, it was like 120 years of intermittent religious war because people were so uptight about whether or not you were a Catholic or a Huguenot or a Walloon or, all this stuff, these were life and death issues. And finally people just became sick of it. And I choose to believe that we may be approaching such a watershed with the social ideologies that have just been dinging themselves into the global population for the past 100 years. They are extremely bankrupt. The notion of any kind of serious competition between Marxist-Leninism and capitalist democratic techno-fascism, or whatever it is ludicrous. Neither system works in the presence of the need to wage ideological warfare against the other. And yet it's fairly clear that each society could function quite well if it didn't have that burden. And similarly, in many microcosms of that situation around the world, it's clear that ideology has become some kind of anachronism. It's a kind of lack of good taste. It's like being a nut, so that you come on with some ideology and people just look at their plate. They're embarrassed for you. And well, they should be, because that butter's no bread. That's just a big pain in the neck. The ideology which naturally claims our attention is pretty well understood. It's like it says in the Old Testament. You can know the truth. The truth is the still small voice in your heart. We don't have to take courses in theology and ethics to get all this down. The political agenda is fairly clear. You feed people, you cure disease, you anticipate and solve social problems having to do with sewage disposal, distribution of land and wealth, so forth and so on. I mean, who's kidding who? None of this stuff is controversial unless you're living inside a locked ward, which we seem to be doing. So, more and more, this anti-ideological position has to be articulated. It's no big deal about how you cause language to evolve. You cause language to evolve by saying new and intelligent things to each other. And then other people say, oh, well, so this thing that I've always thought but never felt like saying is actually legitimate and okay, and I can say it and I will say it, and then it begins to move like a wave through society. I mean, you will be told that for me to advocate the poisonous nature of ideology without calling it anarchy is to peddle my own private ideology. But this is absurd. It's like saying if someone tells you not to drive, that they're advocating a certain style of driving. That isn't it at all, It's a translation of levels. It's something entirely different. Both of these things, the toxic nature of ideology and the importance of the felt presence of immediate experience, can be brought together under the notion that we cannot afford the continued existence of what has been called throughout most of the 20th century the unconscious. That the unconscious is actually a kind of neurotic excuse for not getting our act together as a species. It is a kind of infantilism, a a giving of permission by each of us to all of us to not get our act together. And the way in which the unconscious is eliminated is by turning the language machinery back upon itself and reflecting on the process of attention. This is what Buddhism is all about. Attention to attention, awareness of the modality of the cognitive process. Don't be fooled by yourself. Don't be made a sucker of by yourself. Just rise above that possibility by paying attention. Attention to attention causes the light of language to fall into these dark and unilluminated corners where infantilism is tolerated in the individual personality. Doing that to oneself has a kind of a morphogenic field effect, a kind of chain reaction which sweeps through society. This is believe what all these gurus are always trying to say in a somewhat, I don't know, more concrete and therefore somewhat less convincing fashion. But it's simply that the act of conscious self-inspection creates more conscious people, which create a more conscious society, which erodes the possibility of the poisonous and toxic effects of ideology. This is what psychedelics were and are about in terms of their social position and their legal position in society. Psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong. And, government and society spend a lot of money educating you into being a loyal worker, consumer, debt payer, and citizen. So if anarchy is to have a meaning, and I think it is the great future for human society, because what it means is only responsible human beings can exist in an anarchistic society. To the degree that people are responsible, we will have anarchy. And the reason America, I believe, historically has been so successful is because it's really a place where you can almost get away with anything. And if that is lost, if monolithic ideologies throw a damper on that, then cultural momentum will pass to other cultures. And in fact, to some degree, I see this coming. We had a conversation with a prominent politician recently, and he pointed out that Japan is now the leading Western country. This indicates a cultural crisis of some depth for the ideals of the American Constitution. My brother is a brain scientist at the National Institute of Mental Health in Bethesda, Maryland, the crown jewel of American brain science. Everybody there is a Japanese graduate student doing work on a 2-year or 3-year scholarship. So, but I don't see or hear a New Age voice coming out of the Japanese. I think this is the cultural model that the West is uniquely able to promulgate